Welcome to Carl and Heather Present,
the podcast where we dive into the insights, challenges, and humor of being married to someone who is nothing like you.
Are you ready?
Let's go.
Oh, don't you know it's Carl and Heather Present Marriage Podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Carl and Heather Present, coming to you live from the beautiful podcast studio here in the palatial confines of the Carl and Heather Present compound in beautiful Franklin, Tennessee.
I love it.
How's it going, babe?
It's going great. Yeah.
Well, today we are going to be talking about challenges and handling them together as a married couple. So looking forward to that.
Yeah. What do you think what's one of your biggest challenges in your life right now?
Biggest challenge in my life right now is something that's happened to me it's kind of over time, but it's finally accumulated to a boiling point where I realize that I have been manipulated and and beaten down to where I started as a person who refused to allow our family to have a dog for many, many years. And then the boys wore me down and paid for their own dog. And now they have a dog. And now that dog has gone from like being completely unwelcome to now he sleeps on the bed with us.
How often does he sleep on the bed with us?
Whenever he wants to.
Yeah.
He sleeps in the bed more than I do.
And tell us how you really feel about that. Tell our listeners how you really feel about our beloved Utah.
Well, I mean, I sing a song all the time.
You sing, to be clear, you sing multiple songs all the time.
It's how I process my pain. I've always done that. Since I was a little kid, I made up songs
You were a songwriter.
to help orient myself in the midst of pain. So I sing a song called Take You to a Farm.
Yes.
And it's about one day when it's my turn again, I'm going to take them to a farm.
I think that we should do an episode where you share all the songs about Utah.
I don't know about that.
And how you want, all the things you want to do to Utah.
Maybe I'll tag on to the end of this episode, my version of Take Him to a Farm.
Okay. I think we would love that. Okay. Yeah, that's funny. Okay. Well, 5 of the 6 of us are crazy about Utah.
Yeah,
I would say that's true. But anyway, let's move on. Let's talk about a listener comment, which was so fun. We had Jamie Keller on Facebook referring to episode 8. This is the episode where we had our boys.
The Thanksgiving episode. Yeah,
and
I remember that.
She said, Dylan is so excited for that shout out. Brought me to tears. Love this episode.
Wow. So now the Keller family has gotten 2 shout outs on Carl and Heather Present.
Twice to the Kellers.
Great.
Well, I feel like they deserve 2 shout outs. They're a pretty great family.
They give our kids rides a lot of different places.
Yes, absolutely.
And so the context of that comment is Dylan is our son Abe's best friend.
Yeah.
And one of his real tight buddies. And Abe was able to say on the podcast, hey, my buddy helped me through a hard time. So
yeah.
That was really
cool. Hey, before we get started, I do want to mention something to our listeners. And that is, I want to remind everybody about the Behold Women's Gathering that's coming up really, really soon, February 8th of this year. You can still get tickets. Tickets are still available. We do expect to reach capacity, and so go ahead and get your tickets if you've not gotten them. But it's a women's conference that some friends and I started last year. This is our 2nd year. We have some amazing speakers and worship leaders. You can go to beholdgathering.com to get your tickets. It's an all-day event, 9 to 3 on February 8th, and we would love to have you there.
It's going to be great, and it's going to sell out, and I can't wait to help you with it because it was awesome last year. It's going to be even better this year.
I'm really excited. So,
all right. So we're going to look back at the idea about how handling life's challenges together. Some challenges come up for everybody. You know, a lot of us have baked into our wedding vows for better or worse, for sickness and health, these things, because the setup is no matter what life throws at you, you want to stay together.
Right.
But invariably, the stuff's going to come.
Yeah, so let's get real and talk about some of our challenges, okay? You up for this? Well, talking about some of the challenges that we have experienced throughout our now 26 years of marriage. I would say some of them might feel small, but then over time they build up. And so maybe little idiosyncrasies that each of us have, not just you and I, but everybody, we have in our marriage that we bring to the marriage that you don't realize about somebody until you live with them. Okay. So like for you, it is like you love to leave your socks on top of each other in the floor beside the hamper or near the hamper, not in the hamper. And they're taken off. The socks are taken off together. They're not just strewn throughout, but they're together close enough to the hamper where in my mind, I think, man, it would have been so easy to just put them in the hamper. But yet they're just beside the hamper or somewhere close to the hamper. And so that's something that over time I've noticed.
You noticed it. You don't like it?
Well, I don't love it. It's this little thing about you. So
Well, I am trying to keep them together so that
do
they
you
don't
get credit for keeping them together, even though they don't quite make it to the hamper?
I mean, partial credit, is that a thing?
Partial credit. I do feel like this is genetic too, because I've seen this trait passed down to our kids.
To our sons.
Okay, so that's something I noticed about you. Tell me something about me, like something you noticed about me
That gets on
over
my
the years.
nerves?
Yeah, something that's like bothers you.
Babe, nothing.
But if you were asking for a friend or thinking about, somebody else's
If I was
wife.
confessing this to my men's group, I would say, you organize everything in piles
Okay.
of like papers, pens,
Mm-hmm.
and then also like whatever you think you might need one day, you put it in your purse.
Okay.
Like it could be like, an old calculator that's been in there for like 9 years. You also do this thing with recipes. Like we live in the.
We're doing multiple things now, just so you know. But go ahead. Go ahead. You already started.
You did too with socks. There's both socks. So
That's not fair.
you do this thing
Okay.
with recipes. Like we live in the digital age, in
We
the
do.
digital world, and all of our recipes that you have. That we cook with regularly,
Right.
you're a very strict recipe follower.
I am. Yes.
But the way that you keep these recipes is in a pile of paper.
Yeah.
And each recipe has been printed out on an old 2001 inkjet printer. And it's just this recipe, and I followed one this very day to make taco soup.
Yeah.
And I looked at the date, and it was an email that someone sent to you in 2010 that said, "Here's the taco soup recipe.
It
Enjoy."
was from my friend Annie Freeman.
It was
Shout out.
in digital form to begin with, and you printed it out.
Right.
And now we've kept up with that piece of paper now 15 years.
Yeah, okay.
And it's got sauce on it. It's dog-eared. It's impossible to read. But, like, that's our recipes. And we've probably got a stack of 50
Yeah.
pieces of paper. They're not stapled together. They're not in paper protectors.
Yeah.
I don't have a ton to say about that.
Yeah. Is there a rebuttal option here, or do we just need to move on?
All of these things could live on your phone, and they would never get.
Okay, here's the deal. If they live on my phone, they're probably on Pinterest or somewhere else.
They are on Pinterest.
Right. Where I will have to scroll through people's commentary about the recipe before I get to the
Yeah,
actual
okay,
recipe.
that's
and
annoying.
pop-ups. And it drives me nuts. I don't care about your multiple pictures of your recipe or pictures of the process or what you think or how people loved it. I
Okay.
just want the recipe.
All right. Well, here's the deal. If you're listening with somebody and you're out there in the podcast listener community, we get our thing. We all have our thing.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
we get on each other's nerves.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Those are just a few of mine with you.
Right.
But do
Everybody
you
has them.
know of anybody else that puts their socks on the floor?
Yeah, socks on the floor. Or how about people that squeeze the toothpaste from the top?
Or people that control the temperature and they do it like a dictator and no one else gets to be comfortable.
Yeah, or people that are loud talkers.
I am not a loud talker.
okay.
Or people who are late all the time.
Or people who eat off their spouse's plate or take sips of their Diet Coke, big sips of their Diet Coke.
Okay.
I don't know.
What if people put their cold feet on your body?
To warm it,
I
yeah.
don't like that.
Or people who correct your driving,
Or people who use like 300 decorative pillows on a bed.
maybe. Or people who are a nose picker a gas passer, or regularly express something from an orifice that no one else wants to see or smell?
I kept quiet about that.
You
and
did.
I didn't say anything about
You
that.
surely did.
We all
Yep.
have our flaws.
Yep.
Okay, fine.
Yep.
We're going through these types of challenges together.
Right.
That kind of stuff is when you have to take the high road and seek wisdom otherwise,
Right.
or choose wisdom.
Right.
Otherwise, small things
Yeah. Small things.
turn into huge things. Proverbs 19:11. A person's wisdom yields patience. It is to one's glory to overlook an offense. So a lot of times all marriages have some kind of challenge like that. It's wise to take those things, and as annoying as they can be, it's to one's glory to just overlook it. You get a pass on the recipes because I like the food.
Right. And you get a pass on the socks because I like you with socks and I like you wearing socks.
Okay.
But those are funny things that we talk about. But we've had, as of late, we've had some more serious challenges. We kind of talk about those things as like a little light
And
thing.
yeah, sometimes like challenges are like, that's like those things we talked about are just like personality based challenges. It's like, that's who you are versus who I am. And,
Right.
and I experience you in some way that is challenging for me.
Sure.
That's one kind of challenge. And every marriage has those. And all of those need to be held pretty open handedly. We need to bear with one another.
Right.
Sometimes we face challenges together that are huge.
Yeah.
I was fired from my job
Yeah.
last year. That became a huge challenge for us.
Right. As a couple and as a family. So walk me through that process, not all the details, but just how that was a challenge. And just let's talk about it.
I got fired. I was a pastor to church. I got fired from my church. And although I didn't do anything shameful, so to speak, like the big things like steal money or be inappropriate with relationships, opposite sex, I still lost my job at the church.
Right.
And we lost our church family. The rug was pulled out from under us financially.
Yeah.
We really ended 21 years of being involved in one way or another at that church, like with the stroke of a pen.
Sure.
Was over. And I remember sitting at Jenny's ice cream with you and telling you they let me go.
Right.
And we were both kind of just pretty disoriented. But I remember feeling just like inside of me a lot of shame, because even though I didn't do a shameful thing, I still felt shame.
Yeah.
I felt fear, like, how am I going to provide for my family? I felt anxious because I'm looking at you and you're looking back at me, and I see in your eyes like, oh man, this is a real challenge. And I don't even know if in that moment we hadn't even begun to unpack just how challenging that was going to be. So
Yeah.
that's how I felt.
Yeah.
And that was a challenge that, it's kind of one of those things. It's like, I explained it to you like this earlier. You know how when somebody's dying and they're like if a person you have is dying and they're sick, they're going to die. But it's not until they actually die that you really feel the loss. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so like, maybe I had an idea that I was going to get fired, and I had maybe even told you.
Yeah, we talked
It's like,
about
hey, I don't think this is going great. And the next, but then I did get fired, and it was like, ooh,
Yeah.
wow, okay, there's no way to back out of that. It's
Right.
done.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
what? And you just,
Yeah.
and so that challenge kind of came into our life.
Yeah. And I think for me, I felt a lot of things too. I felt, and we felt some of the same things, but we felt some different things. Like I felt really sad. I felt afraid. I felt really angry, and somewhat like you were explaining, but I also knew how important a job is to a man and providing for a family. And so I knew that there would be a huge loss there. I think one of the things that we've learned through this, and let me say this, there have been a lot of challenges that I don't feel like we've gone through well.
Yeah.
This was not one of them. I think by the grace of God and because we had the most amazing friends and community around us, we handled this challenge as well as we could because we were Team Carty through it all. Mm-hmm. And I had your back and you had mine and we were together and nothing was going to separate us. And we knew that the reality is that because the enemy does want to steal, kill, and destroy, that was going to be the plan to divide us as our family. Like we're our central family unit. And so I knew that was the plan, but we were Team Carty, and I love some of the things that the Lord did through that. But I think we had to make a decision at the beginning. Hey, are we going to do this together or are we going to do this separate?
Well, and I would like to, you said one thing to me. I don't know if I've ever told you this before, but you said one thing to me when I was kind of processing out loud about how I was feeling. Mm-hmm. And I felt like I had, struck out. Mm-hmm. And you told me, you said, I would much rather be married to somebody who strikes out swinging than who just stands there and lets the ball go by.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You were like, I don't want to be married to somebody who's afraid to swing at a pitch.
Right.
And if you strike out sometime, so what?
Right.
And that spoke the volumes to me about whose team you were on.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I did strike out. I certainly didn't do it perfect.
Right.
But you let me know, just in a little thing like that, that whatever fears you might have had were not so big that you didn't still believe in me.
Absolutely.
And us.
Yeah. And I think we talked about this, like you didn't get fired, we got fired.
Yeah.
Because we're Team Carty. Right. So we got fired. And so we do this together. Like whatever we do together. We strike out together. We hit home runs together, but we do it together. And I think that's important for everybody that as a couple, whatever challenges we face them together. I love Ecclesiastes 4:9-10. It says, 2 are better than 1 because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up, but pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. Yeah. I love that. So,
all right, that's losing a job. That's a tough one.
Yeah.
What's a tougher one?
A tougher one, I would say I would lose 100 jobs before I would go through this one again that we went through. And it was our oldest child was a 6-month-old baby. And I took him to a 6-month checkup and the doctor said, I see something interesting. And she went back out of the room for a long time and came back and said he needed a CT scan. Of course, we asked what for, and she said it might be this. And it turns out it was what she had said. It was something called craniosynostosis. And if you know anything about that or you don't, you can just find out that ultimately you have to have cranial surgery. It's a very serious surgery, or it can lead to blindness, mental handicaps or death. And so it's not an optional surgery. And so we were faced at that time with handing our only child, 6-month-old, over to a surgeon, a cranial surgeon, a plastic surgeon, to reshape his head and do major cranial surgery. And it was, to date, one of the hardest things we've gone through. And this was one of the times where I feel like we processed differently and neither of us handled it and processed well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us about you, and then I'll...
My version of that story was, I remember we were out on the road playing music for a living, which is what we did at the time, when I got the call, and we got the call from the doctor that confirmed that's what Oak had and what was next. And I just remember just being so mad kind of because the person that told me what was wrong with him sort of told me like they would when they were saying that something's wrong with my car. It was just like, you're gonna need to do this and do that, and I was like, wait a minute, you're not talking about my transmission. You're talking about at that time my only son, and he was 6 months old.
Right.
You know, new parents.
Yeah.
I barely knew how to give the kid a proper bath and change his diaper.
Right.
And now I'm going to hand him over, to these surgeons. And so I remember just like getting mad at God. Mm-hmm. And I remember the weeks leading up to his surgery, I was really, really afraid. And I did not know what to do. And I felt so powerless and so much shame and so much fear that I started acting out. Like I went really easily to anger with you and with the people around me.
Yeah.
And to make myself feel better about that, I went to pornography and medicating myself, my weakness and my fear and my inadequacy by this fantasy life that pornography provided for me. And I remember one night I was about to lead worship for an event, and it was just before Oak was supposed to have a surgery. You weren't there. Something went wrong at sound check, and I got angry with somebody into a mic, into a room. It was a room full of people, and it would have been like an hour-long sound check, and it was supposed to go 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It was just a frustrating thing. That was a reason, but not an excuse. And I barked at somebody into a microphone, and it was one of those kind of things where the whole room kind of froze because there was other people in there. And my band guys kind of froze, and they were like, "Hey, man, that's not cool." I had some good guys around me. I always have. But they were like, "That's not cool." And I had to fix that. But then I realized I got to fix this more than just being mean. I got to talk to Heather. I got to talk to some brothers and tell them, look, this is where I am. I'm afraid. I'm acting out in these ways, but it's really being driven by this fear. So that's what happened to me, in the days and weeks after we got Oak's diagnosis.
Yeah. I remember that night. I remember you coming home and telling me. And I remember when I heard the news, and this is my go-to, instead of being angry, I went to control. And so I started thinking, okay, how are we going to tell our parents? When are they going to come and visit? Who are they going to stay with for the surgery? What do we need materials-wise to make sure he gets through this and afterwards and healing? And all the things that I knew I could control, I went into hyper-control, and including you. And so I wanted to make sure I could control everything. And so I remember when you told me that, what I thought
when
was...
When I told you that I had been looking at pornography.
Yes, yes. And I remember thinking, okay, I need to control this situation. And that ended us up in marriage counseling with a dear friend and a wonderful counselor. And I remember having a conversation with you in marriage counseling after the fact, and speaking to you in such a way that when I was finished, he looked at me and he said, "How dare you speak to him that way? You sounded like a mother scolding her child." And I was furious because in my mind, I thought, wait, we're here because of him anyway. What do you mean? How dare me? How dare him? But what I realized, and what kind of our friend Jeff mirrored for me, was my pride and my control in that situation of like, I had so much pride and control in me that it was just ugly. And it came out in such a way, if you've ever been around somebody who's prideful and controlling, it's very obvious to the people around them, but it's not very obvious to the person who's struggling with the pride or who's welling up with pride. And so I think for both of us, we could have handled that situation in one of two ways. We could have gone to the Lord and been led by the Spirit. Or what we had to do was in our sin, in each of our sin, we had to lean on confession and repentance. And, Scripture tells us if we confess our sins, He's faithful and just to forgive us our sins and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. That's what we had to do to each other and to the Lord, and that's what you led by doing that night when that kind of all blew up. We didn't have to choose that route. That is a route we can choose, though, if we find ourselves steeped in sin. But we could have also turned to God and we could have been led by the Spirit, like Galatians 5 says, So I say, walk by the Spirit, and you will not gratify the desires of the flesh. For the flesh desires what is contrary to the Spirit, and the spirit what is contrary to the flesh. They are in conflict with each other, so that you are not to do whatever you want. But if you are led by the Spirit, you are not under the law. And so we had choices. We always have choices when challenges come up,
Yeah.
how we respond.
And when the challenge comes up and we respond in the flesh, I was trying to gratify my desires, the desires of my flesh,
Right.
and not just sexual desires, but the desire to feel in control and desire to feel powerful, which is an illusion that pornography presents to everybody that views it. It's like, I want to be in control of this story. I don't want to risk the vulnerability of a real sexual encounter. So I'll pretend, and that way I can control the narrative.
Yeah.
So, and for you, as another form of control, you wanted to control me.
Absolutely.
But both of us were trying to indulge, or trying to medicate pain.
Yeah.
The pain that challenges invariably bring to us, trying to medicate those challenges and mitigate their impact by indulging the flesh. And that's
Right.
what the scriptures are trying to say to us. No, guard your heart.
Yeah.
You're going to want to go here. Husbands and wives are going to want to go there.
Yeah.
That's our natural impulse, but you cannot fight a spiritual battle by natural means.
Right.
It will fail you every time.
Right.
So
how does this though all intersect with the gospel? Because we always talk about that when we finish. Like, how does dealing with conflict together or challenges together as a couple, which we will ultimately always all have, okay? How does that intersect with the gospel?
Psalm 91 says, whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge and fortress, my God in whom I'll trust. And it goes on to talk about, surely he will save you from the fowler's snare and from the deadly pestilence, and he will cover you with his feathers, and you will not fear the arrows or the things that are trying to get you in the daytime and in the nighttime. And it talks about a person who is under attack. It talks about a person who is having some challenges
Yeah.
and saying, they will not come near me. Those things cannot come near me because I rest in the shadow of the Almighty. Whoever dwells there. And so learning and practicing through peace, silence, prayer, worship, and these practices accumulate into the strength that we need to face challenges. But I tell you, when all of that stuff was going on, the last thing on my mind was resting in God. I tried to grab control by the horns and do it my own. I was not a man of prayer. I was not a man of worship. I was not a man of peace. And all of those are fruits of the flesh. You know what I mean? Just all of those things. I turned my back on the things that I knew that would protect me.
Yeah.
So it's a Psalm 91 intersection with the gospel. When we experience challenges, and that they will invariably come, and will we meet them having spent time with Jesus
Yeah.
in his presence, in his word, in worship to him. We are never out of the saving grace of God. We can look for strength and hope in other things other than the Lord,
Yeah.
but we will experience the disappointment and destruction that those things bring on us. The gospel is unchanging, the established refuge for us to run to. And so we run to Jesus. Augustine said, I'll be restless until I rest in you. And we will not find lasting help in life apart from the presence of God, prayer, and worship.
Well, as we wrap up, we want to remind you that God is a refuge and strength, an ever-present help in time of trouble. So cling to him when life's challenges ultimately come your way. We will see you guys next week when we talk about being married and feeling alone.
All right, together on purpose.
Together on purpose.
It's Carl and Heather present.
I'm gonna take you to a farm. I'm gonna take you to a farm With the chickens and the piggies and the ducks, I'm gonna take you to a farm. Gonna put you in the car. I'm gonna drive real far. I'm gonna leave you with a mean, mean dog in a real dark barn. Gonna take you to a farm.